Yeah, you do get celebrated for the hard thing that you've done, such and such. They're a V15 climber or whatever. And it is odd because you can be the person that spent 100 sessions and done a V15, but then you could go to a load of different V9s and fail on them. And that just doesn't add up to me. It doesn't make any sense how that you could be good at climbing, good enough to climb that hard, but then bad enough to fall off something that easy. Yeah, for me, it's how good someone is. It's more about what they fail on as much as what they can do. If they can go out and do a whole load of V7 to V11s in all different styles, are they a better climber than the person that can do one V15 after 2 years work or something? And for me, yeah, probably, but for Instagram, absolutely not.
Ned Feehally, welcome to the Testpiece podcast. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. Yeah, good.
Wait, I just remembered that you guys were saying that if I say, how's it going, is that like a rhetorical question in the UK?
Yeah, you wouldn't dignify that with much of a response. You'd probably say, right.
Yeah. I really meant it.
Yeah.
Well, Ned, I've got in front of me your book, Beastmaking, and that's a little bit of a play on words in the sense that you are one of the founders of Beastmaker. It's got to be one of the most iconic companies making training tools for, how long have you guys been doing it?
We started in about 2007 or 8, so
jeez,
I'm getting on for 20 years. Yeah.
Okay, congrats. A couple of decades in the industry. That's no joke. You also are a quiet climber, Ned. You don't talk about it a lot, but you have flashed as hard as V14 or AP plus. I know you've climbed V15 because we talked about the Big Island last night. And so, so congrats on a successful career in both the industry and climbing.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, thanks for coming and visiting us out here in, we're joking, in sunny Southern California. And yeah, let's start off with your book, man. You are a successful founder of Beastmaker. Why did you take the time to also write a book? Like, what was the impetus for that?
It felt like an itch I needed to scratch, to be honest. I'd sort of had, it had been in the back burner of my mind for a while, and I thought, there's got to be a source of information that is everything I would have told myself as a kid that no one told me. So I felt like I spent ages working all this stuff out. So then I thought, well, if that was in one place, that would be quite handy to people that are just getting going or, keen to get better but don't really know what to do. And at the time, I mean, it's probably not changed much, but there's tons of training information out there. The internet's sort of awash with a bit too much and a bit too much detail, so I was trying to just give a more, not necessarily generic, but a kind of more gentle overview of training and what it takes to improve without kind of boring people with numbers and spreadsheets and blah, blah, blah. Because for most people, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
You want to turn up and have fun and do a few of the right things.
For some reason, I'm surprised to hear that there wasn't a ton of resources when you were, I don't know, I guess that's in the 2000s. And my naive American view is when I think of the UK, I think of it as being like kind of the hotbed of training. Like I think about Ben Moon and Jerry Moffat. Like, to me, when I think of hard training, I think of the UK. Am I wrong there?
No, I think it's true. It's totally true. But they did that, and everyone else kind of didn't do that, and they were really good. And Malcolm Smith as well.
Oh yeah.
They sort of pioneered all that, really. And I mean, I wasn't in Sheffield, so I wasn't part of that scene at all. And I was just hearing what I heard from reading magazines or chatting to people at the gym. So it was, while there was that kind of core, hardcore training scene in Sheffield, centred around Ben, Jerry and Malcolm, basically, there wasn't a huge amount more of that around the country, I don't think. And I think that's grown over time.
Yeah, I guess they didn't sit down and codify it either.
No, exactly. They just turned up and tried really hard because they loved it. and they just so happened to be better than everyone else in the world when they were doing it, you know. So it became a scene, but I don't think they didn't sit around and think, what are we going to do? They just built some boards and trained a lot. And it rains, so, you know.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, because I was like, is there something special going on there that causes people to...
Literally something in the water.
The water itself. Well, I was giving you crap earlier where the subtitle to the book is A Fingers First Approach to Becoming a Better Climber. And we climbed yesterday out in Joshua Tree, and where you showed your ability, Ned, was on climbs that didn't even use your fingers. They were palms. They were stemmy, complex, just beautiful little gems of climbs. But I was giving you crap because I thought, here's the guy who's famous for having strong fingers, for helping people get the strongest fingers. And yes, we did pull on some crimps, but you really showed just your ability to move up rock in the way we always really, you know, enjoy and think of when I think of kind of like climbing.
Yeah, I mean, they'd have been hard to campus. No one's campusing stem gem, are they? But no, I appreciate it. And I think that while I think training needs to focus on the fingers, I think there's a huge amount of climbing that isn't the fingers. You know, there's everything else that needs to work as well in order to climb up stuff. So
yeah, and
it's all essential, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I shouldn't... when I read the book, I definitely noticed there was a lot more in there than just fingers training. But it is something that's interesting about climbing, where if you look at a climber's body, while we do use everything, like I would say what makes climbing unique compared to, I don't know, other sports is like what we have to do with our hands and fingers is kind of heinous compared to, I don't know, football, like, you know.
Yeah, but it is. But I think, I mean, you see it way more now with comps, but what the rest of the body's doing is kind of heinous too. No, I think it's not. Yeah, obviously the fingers are, climbing's the only sport that really taxes the hands like that and the forearms, but also, you know, what your shoulders are doing, what your hips are doing. There's so much going on, isn't there? It's so 3D when you're climbing, and yeah, comps and dynamic stuff really showcases that now. But you know, even climbing an overhang on crimps, you're moving, aren't you? You're kind of flowing around the holds. You're not just, well, you're not meant to just be hauling your way up them.
It happens sometimes.
as much as sometimes you want to.
So when you first started getting interested in training, actually I should just ask that, what made you first start getting interested in training?
I like the idea of getting better, just being able to climb more different things, I think. So I started climbing when I was 9 maybe, so quite young, and a lot of the other people I was climbing with at the gym were maybe 18 or, you know, to adults, you know, 18 to 30 sort of age range, I guess, at the time. So they were just climbing a level above me because they were men and I was this small boy. So I just always looked up to what these people could do, and I thought, oh, I want to be able to do that. And then I just wondered how I could improve, and you'd ask around and people didn't really have any good input, so you just sort of make something up and do it a bit. But then when you're a kid, you just improve, don't you? So it doesn't really matter what you do. You turn up and you get a bit better. So.
Was it always, was it initially focused on fingers when you first were looking to get stronger?
No, when I was really young, it was more doing pull-ups, because I could hardly even lock off with 2 arms. You know, I was just a weak child. So I did loads of pull-ups and then I could lock off. So then I sort of moved on to training other things and, you know, moving on to steeper angles and stuff.
Yeah, I know this sounds strange, but when I read the title, it kind of got me, because I just, again, when I think about what makes climbing and climbers unique, yes, we put our shoulders in crazy positions. God, comp climbing sure puts people's shoulders in crazy positions. But it made me think that some of the foundation of my training should always be addressing finger strength. And that was what really got me in this book too, was just this idea of not training for 6 weeks, not training for 6 months, perhaps training for 6 years, perhaps training for 60 years was really one of the important parts, especially for finger training due to the just kind of nature of that tissue.
Yeah, and I think as much as training, I mean, maybe you've noticed as you've aged a little, You just pick up tweaks, don't you? Things hurt a bit more, and I think as much as trying to improve your strength, a lot of what you're doing on your fingers is just trying to keep them healthy and ticking over and not shocking them, not injuring them. I mean, I notice every few years that I get older, I just get more and more tweaks. Things hurt, don't they? So a lot more of my time now, I mean, it's training technically, but it's more about just kind of staying healthy in the fingers department, certainly.
Yeah, that was actually one of my questions for you is, when you have trained for decades, man, you kind of, I don't want to say you get all the gains you can out of training, but my hunch is you don't, look at your number and then think, I'm going to double this in, 6 months. And so, training must take on a different character.
Yeah, and I think certainly in the fingers, I think you just hit a ceiling beyond which your genetics don't let you go. And I mean, for me now, I know I'll never improve much beyond that, but if I can be at that level and everything else working, then that's quite useful. So that's kind of my aim now, is to not get worse.
I understand. It makes me sad to hear someone else say it, but I understand.
Well, I think it's unfeasible to think that you can improve forever, isn't it? Yeah. I think you'd be mental to think that you could just keep getting better, because you'd have, your grandparents would be burning you off. It just doesn't work.
So, on that note of training for years or decades, something that I struggled with is kind of keeping psych or motivation, or whatever word you want to use. It's very easy to read a program, dream about the gains you're going to get, and that how great a trip you're going to have afterwards. But it's very different when you're 8 months in and you're just kind of showing up. Like, do you think you still have to bring that same intensity, or just how do you think about keeping it relevant and getting the results you want, even if they're just staying where you are over the long haul?
Yeah, I mean, that's changed. I think when you're young, you're a bit more hungry, aren't you? And you're sort of pursuing something the whole time. You want to be improving, you want to be doing the next thing. But I feel like now I've sort of settled into really enjoying climbing well. And if I'm climbing well, that's the thing I like now. So that's what I'm aiming for. So it's kind of not really, I don't struggle to train if I know I'm heading towards feeling like I'm moving well and climbing well, because that's really good fun. And I'll kind of do what it takes to get to that. Whereas when I was younger, I always wanted to be climbing better and improving. But now I just think, if I'm out and I climb well, it's just great fun. So that'll do.
I'm kind of like that too. And what I've noticed is that the longer I can be in that just kind of, wow, I'm climbing well, I actually seem to progress. It's when I am like, oh, I'm climbing well, so I'm going to push it even harder.
Yeah.
That's where I seem to get in trouble. And I can't remember if that was what I was like when I was younger, but now it seems like that whole feeling of just joy and climbing well actually is kind of synonymous with progress.
Yeah, it totally is. And I think as time becomes a bit more limited, with kids or with life, whatever, if you can enjoy the times that you're going out and climbing well, then it doesn't matter that you're climbing less, because you kind of, overall, you're enjoying it probably more than you were, even though you're doing less of it. It's sort of, well, for me, it feels like when I go out now and have a good day, it's just brilliant. Whereas when I was in my 20s, I could go out and if I didn't do something, I'd be a bit bummed, and then, I'd go out the next day and maybe do something and be slightly happier. But now I go out once or twice a week, and it's just a lot more fun, I think. I think I enjoy it more now.
Yeah, nothing makes things more exciting when they're actually novel, because you have so many things pulling you in so many directions. I mean, I got to tell you, Ned, you're still climbing well. You have a wonderful little family, and you've got new companies that we'll talk about, as well as still running Beastmakers. That's a lot on your plate, and so yeah, no wonder when you go out like we did yesterday, it's just joyful. Well,
yeah, it was good. That was great. New crag and new problems. Yeah. Yeah, but also I think I enjoy the fact that there's more going on as well. I enjoyed writing a book. I enjoy running a business. If I wasn't doing those, I'd be quite bored. If I was just going climbing, I think it's quite nice to have all these other things going on.
I agree. On this idea of longer term training, and maybe it doesn't apply to you exactly right now, but Something that I struggle to figure out is, all right, let's do this finger training program. Or I shouldn't even say program. Let's say I want to work on my half crimp. And I know from talking to Ned that I should have expectations of really putting in work over the long haul. But then I know that adaptations also kind of taper off. You need to cycle. Like, how do you know that balance between when you should keep on going on versus, hey, you know what? Maybe it's time to try something new.
Yeah, I mean, that's just deciding how much of a plateau you're willing to live with, I suppose. And there's not really a right answer, is there? But for me, I'm happy to sort of rumble along and do the same thing for perhaps a bit longer than I should. But I don't know, I think if you jump around a bit too much, then you can perhaps never really get anywhere. Whereas if you stick with the same thing for too long, again, you sort of avoid doing anything else. So who knows? And again, a lot of it really, for me now, it depends on which body parts hurt and what I can do around that, as much as what's the thing I need to do most to improve.
Yeah, I don't think that's just an age thing. I feel like I was getting hurt and having to make that decision for
Yeah,
the whole time.
yeah. I think, well, I mean, it's not just age. I think there is, as Shauna always says, it's your kind of training age as well. If you've been trying hard for longer, then I think your body's perhaps a bit more on edge, isn't it? Whereas, if you've been pootling around for 30 years, you might not be getting injured as much.
Yeah. Maybe it's just because you really have a big background in training and seem to have developed a really love of it. I have a hard time getting in and bringing intensity or even going in at all when I'm injured. So let's say, I hurt my right shoulder. Well, I could still probably train my right fingers or my left whole,
Yeah.
The shoulder is pretty important, but you got a lot of other body parts. Any tricks for kind of, I don't know, coming in with intensity and psych to deal with those areas that you still can even when you're injured?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's just I just like working hard. So I like feeling like I'm doing something. And it sort of doesn't matter what it is in the end. I like trying really hard. And if I'm injured, I'll find a way of doing something where I have to try hard because I enjoy it, it's good for me, whatever. It's just that effort. I guess it's focusing on that and not thinking about everything else is actually really nice, isn't it? So whatever I'm doing, I just like to try hard and be doing that 100%.
Gosh, I like that, and I'm shaking my head because it's what I hate most about getting injured is that what I like doing and climbing in some ways is trying hard. That's one of the most fun things.
Yeah, But I don't mean trying hard in climbing. I just mean, in anything. If I'm hiking, carrying loads of stuff, I like it. I go for it. If I go out for a run, I go for it. That's just the way I roll. I just have this issue where I have to try hard.
I don't know if that's an issue. That sounds like a great path to success to me.
I don't know, but it could come from a good place, couldn't it? But that could equally come from a bad place, and I don't know.
Well, that makes me think of something I wanted to ask about that I was reading in the book. I think, let me see if I got the actual quote. It isn't always clear where our natural abilities lie and how well our bodies suit climbing until we start getting stuck in and testing our limits. And what made me think of that right there is, it's like, is your superpower that you just like trying hard, on, I guess, whether it's training or the boulders? And maybe you could speak to that, but then also just what you mean there, where how does one find out what their special ability is?
Yeah, with the trying hard thing, I think that mindset. I mean, the whole concept of your podcast is what takes from good to great, isn't it? And I think really, it's just a mindset thing. I think the people that want to do something the most are the ones that do it. I think a lot of it's just mindset. So, yeah, I mean, I just really like trying hard, and the knock-on effect is I seem to keep improving. So, it just happens by accident almost. And then what was the other half of the question?
How people might discover what their strength that they should lean into.
The superpower sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, they just come out naturally, don't you? I think you go climbing with your mates, and then you'll discover there's just a certain move that you can do, and you'll think, oh, why can I do that? This is great. I'm going to keep doing this move. This is brilliant. And you just find it out, don't you? You find moves that you just find easy, and it feels really nice, doesn't it? So you just, I'm going to do that move.
Definitely want to rub it in their face too.
Yeah,
and say, this is easy.
do.
What's the matter with you?
And I think it just comes out organically. If you've climbed on enough different things, then you just know what you get on with, don't you? And equally, you know what you don't get on with.
Yeah, and
what
that's
you avoid.
That's what's interesting. What you're saying there, that I really agree. Where you can't really find your superpower until you show up for a while.
Yeah. You can't decide it's going to be something, can you? And turn up. But I think everyone has something that they're going to be particularly good at. And it's just about locating it if you want to. Some people might not be bothered.
Yeah, actually, we should say, and that's how you find your weakness as well, is when your buddies do something easily.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
And shove it in your face.
Yeah. Yeah, it's to and fro, yeah.
So I'm curious, what do you think your superpower is, and where do you struggle?
I think probably most of my strength is in my legs, to be honest. So anything with kind of heels or leggy moves, I always seem to be okay on. But then anything that's just pure finger strength, I just always find hard.
Wow, I'm just thinking through yesterday where you definitely did use your legs on those stemming problems.
Well, I mean, I've got to carry it with me, so I've got to make it work.
Then it also seemed like your fingers did pretty darn well on some of those small crimps. And I'm curious if that really, when you started training fingers, many decades ago, was it a noticeable weakness? Like I know that we all have a ceiling that we have to acknowledge, but how much gains do you think most people do have in front of them if they take the time to devote long term?
Yeah. I mean, I think you can improve a good amount, but you couldn't just take any old person off the street and get them to 9A finger strength, could you? But I think everyone can improve a certain amount, and how much that is, I've no idea. But I think with finger strength especially, so much of it's kind of inbuilt. You get people that can just hang on an edge, don't you? No problem, hang on an edge. And then you get other people that can't, whatever they do, they train for 10 years and never do it. So, I don't know, everyone can improve, but at some point that improvement's going to stop, and how do you know where that's going to be? I guess it's perhaps easier now because a lot of people have climbing parents, don't they? A lot of these younger kids have come from a climbing parent, so they have a bit of an idea, and maybe their genetics is shifted slightly towards being suited to climbing, perhaps. So I think I think that's why the level's going up so much, isn't it? Because we're getting all these new kids.
I saw one of them yesterday.
They're bred for it, yeah.
Frankie, Olympics 2040 or first V20, I don't know.
She might get bored of it.
Yeah. You don't want to force her. You can't force her.
Oh, no. She forces us at the moment, honestly. Trying to keep up.
Yeah, well, something I heard there that I think is just important for my mindset is that maybe I've hit my finger strength ceiling. I don't know, but that's not really an excuse to not train because of the injury prevention, because you don't know how long your plateau is. Maybe it was a 2-year plateau.
Yeah,
and it's, I was hoping, Ned, you were just going to tell me, Josh, I can measure you. This is exactly where you are in your genetic potential.
Someone will tell you that.
Yeah.
And it's bollocks.
Yeah. Well, a lot of your training, it sounds like, has been in pursuit of, climbing. And I know you like being a well-rounded climber. And again, I'm going to, give you a crap because I thought it was hilarious how you demonstrated your ability on all these classic old school climbs that didn't use any kind of finger power, which, is what that would be the trope to make fun of you about. You wrote the book on it. And
doesn't mean I can do it.
So I guess my question is just, what do you mean by being a well-rounded climber, and how do you train for being a well-rounded climber?
Yeah, well, I think I've always just enjoyed being able to turn up and just kind of have a good go at what I fancy at the crag. And that could be anything. It could be a roof, it could be an arete, it could be a slab. I don't like the idea of turning up and seeing something amazing and thinking, I'm not good enough at that style. So I just can't do that problem, even though it's the best thing here. So I've just always wanted to be able to go and do the things that look the best. So yeah, to me that's meant I've got to be good at everything, really.
What does look the best to you?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess there's looking the best, isn't there? And then there's stuff that you have some sort of history or some sort of, you're involved with it for some reason. Maybe your mate's done it. Maybe you've read about it in a magazine. Maybe you've seen a video of it. So there's that side, and then there's just simply that looks cool, either the line or the moves or whatever. I guess for me it's a lot about the line, but I've climbed some terrible lines, so I can't say it's all about aesthetics. But then there's tons of stuff I've done purely because of, I've heard about it, I've read about it. Someone said, go and do that one, so then I've wanted to go and do it.
Can you tell me more about gritstone climbing? And the reason why I'm asking is that I think maybe it was Shauna made the comment about, no, these footholds are great compared to the footholds in gritstone. I just want to understand like that rock type, so we're in Joshua Tree, it's granite, and the feet that are bad are typically still little crystals, or they have little edges, and I'm just kind of wondering what it's like over in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, well, it's just a very coarse sandstone, so you end up in situations where you can just smear on kind of anything and your feet will stick. And similarly, you can kind of hold on to nothing if it all works right. It's often quite low angled, so you can just find yourself sticking onto stuff that doesn't seem feasible. I think there's a lot more grip to it than granite. Certainly, Joshua Tree style granite, it's coarse, but if you're not crimping up on something, you're kind of slipping off, aren't you? There's no inherent grip to the rock. Whereas with gritstone or sandstone, you could stick to it, can't you?
Especially not yesterday. I don't know if we had the best conditions.
I'm going to play that card, yeah. I think it was very humid.
Always got to have a card to play. So you were telling me that this whole love of being well-rounded, and that, I think that really does speak to being a climber and that concept of being able to walk up to anything, and you need a massive skill set. And we were kind of joking how potentially the younger generation that may not value that as much, we maybe put them on a pedestal because we see one grade, but that maybe isn't exactly what really constitutes being a good climber. I was just wondering if you could, expand on that.
Yeah, I think perhaps it's the influence of social media or whatever, but I think perhaps now, yeah, you do get celebrated for the hard thing that you've done, such and such, they're a V15 climber or whatever. And it is odd because you can be the person that spent 100 sessions and done a V15, but then you could go to a load of different V9s and fail on them. And that just doesn't add up to me. It doesn't make any sense how that you could be good at climbing, good enough to climb that hard, but then bad enough to fall off something that easy. So I think for me, it's how good someone is. It's more about what they fail on as much as what they can do. If they can go out and do a whole load of V7 to V11s in all different styles, are they a better climber than the person that can do one V15 after 2 years' work or something? And for me, yeah, probably, but for Instagram, absolutely not. So, I think I'm quite old school in that I just love climbing and going climbing and doing stuff. So that's what I want to do. I'm not really bothered about sitting under one thing because I don't get to climb enough.
It's funny because you said V15 and then they could fail on V9s, but I think that grade is even high. You could,
Oh, yeah.
I can fail on things. Well, I don't climb V15, but I could fail on, V3s.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I don't mean just slip off a couple of times, but I mean just not have the skill set to do it. Or maybe you can do it, but you have to climb it in the most horrific way to just bully it, because you probably can. But it's not climbing it, you just getting up it.
I love the look on your face because I know that feeling. You're like, oh.
you know, you can watch people and they, yeah, you can just watch someone climb badly and you just think, I'm not into this. I don't want to do it like that.
I often say this where maybe I'll be climbing on something that's easy for me theoretically, and maybe someone else in my crew that would be a tough send for them, and then they see me do it, and I do it terribly in the sense that like I just take something, you know, I climb it.
Yeah, you bully it.
I bully it. I like that.
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh, that was great." Like maybe I should do it like that. I say, "No,
Yeah,
no,
it felt
this
awful.
was terrible.
Yeah.
Do not pay attention to me. I don't know what I'm doing." And yeah.
Well, I think, I mean, earlier I was going on about the way climbing feels, and I think, yeah, it sits with that, doesn't it? If you know when it feels nice to climb something, and you know when you're kind of climbing it a bit ugly. And for me, I'd always rather do it nicely.
So you've gotten to travel all over the world to fail on sometimes moderates or easy climbs.
Oh yeah.
And I'm wondering, when you first started traveling, did you go to places and get shut down? Just tell me about some of those early days where, you know, I got to see yesterday, Ned, and this was a unique style, a unique place, and you did not struggle. But I have a hunch that is because at some point many moons ago you did struggle.
I guess the times I remember struggling most is when I was a young child climbing with adults, and just trying to keep up with fully grown men, essentially, as a kid. That's the time I really remembered thinking climbing felt hard. But I don't know. I suppose I've not been that good at pushing myself particularly. So perhaps I'm always climbing a bit within my comfort range, a comfort zone sort of thing. So I don't often turn up somewhere and think, oh, well, I'm just going to get on the hardest thing and then get spanked by it. Because I'll turn up and climb a load of easy stuff first, and then you sort of get your eye in a bit more, don't you? But I don't think I've necessarily always had the belief that I could go and do the hard things. So I've always had to work up to them. You know, over the course of a trip, I've worked my way up.
Yeah, I'm curious if you ever, you know, get shut down on a style or a rock, and then, you know, how do you figure out how to translate that to your training? Because ideally, I mean, it'd be great to say, oh, well, I will just live in, I don't know, Rocklands for the next 4 months, but we can't always do that. And it's, you know, sometimes we're just weekend warriors, and sometimes you learn something about yourself, maybe something not so great, like, oh, I'm bad at slabs or whatever. And, you know, how do you kind of take that and then take it home? And then when you're in your cellar and it's raining, you know, try to get better at that. Like any insight into how to take those experiences and put them into practice?
Yeah, I mean, the sort of thing that feels familiar in that is now it's always a really specific thing I'll figure out. So, for instance, recently, I couldn't do a move because my shoulder didn't bend in a particular way. My shoulders have always been quite inflexible, and I'd always just sort of ignored it. But I really got spanked on a move because my shoulder just would not bend, and I should have been able to just lean off the hold, and I couldn't. So it was a really specific situation that's led me to do loads of stretching and try and sort that thing out. But then I've noticed that's helped loads of other stuff. But it tends to be things like that. It's like one very specific thing, and I think, why can't I do that? And then I'll try and figure it out, and then work on that one specific little thing.
Interesting that it often has carryover too. It's funny how that works.
Well, yeah, and I think you'll notice it on one thing, but then it'll actually hold you back loads on a million other things that you've not noticed it on.
Also, I would think that really adds to just general efficiency.
Oh yeah.
And on that note, something I noticed about you is, it's funny that you said your shoulders aren't that flexible, because your legs sure are. You have definitely flexible legs. And just tell me more about flexibility and how it helps you enjoy climbing and climb everything and be well-rounded.
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I had some problems with the hamstrings, and I had a load of exams coming up. So when you're about 14, I think in the UK, you have some exams you get told are important. And, I remember I had to sit still doing these exams for ages, and my hamstrings got really painful from sitting down. I thought, what is going on here? So I just started stretching. I thought, maybe they're tight. I just started stretching every day, and I just never stopped. So I noticed when I went climbing, I thought, oh, my legs are working really well. So I just kept doing it. So it was kind of by accident. And then my climbing style, because then I was sort of just about reaching puberty, so my climbing style sort of developed as I grew and got a bit more muscle. But as I was doing that, I was getting more bendy, so it became really ingrained in the way I climbed. It wasn't like I got all this flexibility late on and then I didn't know what to do with it. It was just sort of a part of me.
Yeah, honestly, that's kind of the holy grail, is being strong and flexible, because they don't necessarily live on opposite ends of the spectrum, but you'll see people in yoga get into positions that are extreme. And I'm not so sure, we were talking about this, I'm not so sure you want to put them stemming in full splits necessarily, because they may just get stuck or fall right through.
Yeah.
And so being able to combine that is, it's something you're on the more muscular side, you're definitely powerful, and then adding that flexibility, do you feel like you can, I guess maybe that's the question, is how do you develop flexibility and make sure that it's, I guess usable is the right word, or maybe safely usable?
Yeah, well, I think I must have mentioned it in the book, but I think it's about how as you develop the flexibility, you introduce it into your climbing, and you're happy with using it on moves. Because I think when I was younger, it was always seen as really uncool to kind of put a heel up or use your legs in a kind of slightly creative way. You're expected to just campus everything because that was cool. I think there's still a bit of a hangover to that now. So I think you've got to be happy with the fact that you're going to climb in a weird, bendy way that people don't do much. Well, they do it more and more now, I think, don't they? But perhaps they didn't so much then. So I think it's about just, as you get more flexibility, it's about really making sure you use it when you climb and get familiar with how it works and what you can do with it, rather than just being able to do full box splits and being able to campus everything because you're really strong. Then there's no point doing the stretching.
Yeah, that's funny, because it's that classic thing where you can train it and get sucked into training, but it's just no one, the boulder does not care that you can do the full splits.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
there's no awards.
There's only so much your body needs as well. There's only so much flexibility that's going to be useful for you. So yeah, if you get to that point where it's not holding you back, then you don't need any more, do you?
So I gotta ask you, you said it's kind of was maybe frowned upon to use a heel, or your legs are just there for swinging around underneath your buff
like
arms.
rudders. Yeah.
But I guess, and again, I'm over here in California. I don't know everything about the UK scene, but I guess I actually always thought of you guys as having impeccable footwork and technique. This is just a trope, but I think about the gritstone, and I think about the lower angle and the technical ability. I think about like Johnny Dawes, and just that.
Johnny,
kind of,
yeah.
And so I'm just chuckling because it kind of doesn't mesh in my head.
Yeah, I think a lot of our rock's quite low angle in the UK, so perhaps it does lend itself to a bit more kind of footsy style. But then equally, we have that culture of training hard and climbing on boards and doing one-armers and all that sort of thing. So we do have both, but it feels to me like it's always been seen as cooler to be strong than it is to be good at climbing. And I think, again, whinging about Instagram and social media, I think there's a lot of that, because you can show off a feat of strength online, can't you? You can say, look how many one-armers I can do. But, if you did the splits or whatever, someone would say, what are you doing that for?
Maybe if you were doing a one arm at the same time.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe it's just this kind of internet-y culture where it celebrates certain stuff and maybe not other stuff. I don't know. I'm not taking it, so I don't know.
Well, I know you're not big on Instagram, although we were joking about how you have the amazing ratio. The amount of posts you've done to the amount of followers you have is very impressive, because you have no posts and quite a few followers.
Well, there were some, but
at
some point in the past I just got fed up and deleted everything. So.
Well, I think it's, I like talking about this because, you are somewhat known for your training and you are very strong. But then, meeting you, climbing with you, I would say the thing that stood out to me is how good it climbing you are. And so just kind of separating those and recognizing that they are different, and training is a fun pursuit that has definitely impact on the climbing, but kind of, I don't know, you're almost, it surprised me how focused you are on climbing and how good you are and how technically you are, but then how much you love going into becoming a beast.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think also, it's funny, you mentioned that kind of technical culture in the UK, and that's something Shauna always mentions, is when she was a kid climbing at her local gym, if you climbed in a scrappy way, you're expected to step down and redo the climb in a good way. So the way she climbs is incredible because she's so in control the whole time. And between us, we just sort of, if you climb something badly, we'll always be laughing at each other for doing a terrible job of it. So I don't know, there's some to and fro with us about that, you know.
That's really interesting that literally if you climb something, but you got to the top, but in a, I don't know if poor style is the right way, in a scrappy way, like you're saying?
If it didn't look in control, they'd come down.
Wow.
Do it again. But when you watch her climb, you can see that, can't you?
Yeah.
She's never out of control. So.
God, that's really interesting that, yeah, I don't think that ethos is there anymore.
I think how good she could have been if she'd dynoed a bit.
Yeah. I'm curious, you and Shauna Coxsey, your wife, have climbed together for many, many years, and it's always interesting when you climb with someone a long time, you notice some of their superpowers and their weaknesses, and also you both climb at such a high level. You guys must analyze each other in a way. You must know Shauna's climbing quite well, and do you guys ever pick apart each other's ability and
the picking apart comes my way usually. No, I think we're quite good at knowing how each other climbs, and we can tell if there's something not quite right, but we don't really need to kind of have much back and forth about it. But occasionally we'll say, oh, what do we need to do? And, occasionally we'll ask for help, but we don't kind of spout it at each other. But I think usually we're fairly good at figuring stuff out, but then occasionally you can have, she often just says, put your foot there and you'll do it. And then it works.
Amazing.
And usually I say to her, try a bit harder and you do it. But no, I think there's not much to and fro, but we're really aware of what each other's doing, and I think we can help each other when we need to. But we probably just say some sort of snide remark and then we know what it means and it works, it's not, we won't sit and have a coaching session,
Shauna, I think Shauna mentioned that you all have a his and hers board in your basement.
We do, yeah.
Tell me more about how you guys each have your own board and kind of what makes them, what makes hers and yours.
So, in the old house we lived in, I built a board in the cellar that was just my thing. We both used it, but it was kind of my thing. I built it for me and to train what I wanted, sort of thing. And then we moved to a house that had more space, so we could put another board in, which is amazing. So now so I built a second board next to it, and then naturally that one became hers because I had my board. So then we just did whatever she wanted. So her board's a lot more kind of, hers feels more like climbing. You're kind of moving around holds a bit more, maybe bigger feet that you're kind of clawing on, because she's a bit smaller, so she struggles out wide. Whereas my board's perhaps a bit more just sort of front on and powerful, because that's something I've always struggled with. So they work really well together. You can have completely different sessions on them, but they're just next to each other.
How do you set a board, or how do you choose holds, and how do you put them in the right manner so that it works your weakness? Or I guess maybe actually the question beneath that is, if you're going to set up a spray wall for yourself, how do you determine what it is that you need to work on? Because you can only do so much on a board. You can't say like, I'm going to set the board to work on my hamstring flexibility.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can just gear it towards certain things. But I mean, essentially, it's still just climbing on the board. But you can, just with your hold selection and the angles of holds, you can sort of gear it towards having certain moves. But I can cheat because I just make the holds. So if we want something bigger, I'll just go and make something bigger. If we want something smaller, I can edit them.
Yeah.
So it's cheating for me. I'm not having to buy holds and work around it. I can just make what I want.
Well, I mean, people can buy the holds that you've made now, so.
Yeah, they can, yeah. But then, there's a lot of stuff. For instance, on her board, she wanted a really specific type of foothold for practicing kind of really clawing in out wide moves, so almost like a spike for your foot.
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't find any, so I just made some, and they work perfectly. So, that sort of feels like a cheat, because what would I say to someone? Oh, go and make some footholds that do that, whatever.
Any tips on how you set up your wall? Did you do it, is it mirrored?
Yeah, I've always done the mirrored.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you decide, where the underclings go? And, it's an art. It's hard to figure out a layout.
Yeah, it really is. And I can't pretend I know there's a way of doing it, but I've found if you throw all your holds on straight away, it never works that well. Whereas if you put a few holds on and have a few sessions and start figuring it out, then it'll end up better. So that definitely works. And also the central there's a sort of circle right in the middle of your board, which is where most of the business happens. So that's the bit that you've got to get right. And on the edges of the board, you can kind of put some bigger stuff out there and not worry so much about it. But the middle bit is where all the business happens, so you've got to get that right. And that's the bit you've got to focus on and spend a lot of time on.
What about setting problems for yourself? Are you, and again, I guess the sub question there is, when you go and climb on the board, are you always trying to, work on a weakness, or is it just for fun? And then, and how do you set problems? How do you know if you're not just setting in your own wheelhouse? Like, you have Shauna set problems for you?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we'll often climb together and make each other problems up, because we know what we can't do. So, but then we'll have a session where, we just fall off each other's problems for a few hours because our strengths are very different. But for me, when I built the original board, it's not really about what I do on it. It's just the fact that I'm on it and I'm on holds that I struggled on. So every hold I put on it was something I found hard. So it didn't really matter what I did on it, because I was always just holding on furiously. And that was kind of all I needed, It kind of doesn't matter what I do. If I'm on that wall, it's really hard. So.
I like that. So you're saying that if you pick holds that you're bad at, no matter what you set or where you put them.
Exactly, yeah. If you're bad enough at the holds, you can't set an easy problem for you. It'll work something you need to work. But you do need the motivation then to climb on a board that's essentially too hard for you. You spend a lot of time falling off it.
Yeah, that's something that you seem to have in spades, this that you're okay with being bad at something. And I feel like with a lot of training for me, and I do see other people on social media, I feel like there's a big temptation to just lean into the exercise you're best at, and then you can put it on Instagram, and, setting up a whole board that you struggle on is maybe not people's first choice.
Yeah, that's why I don't put it on Instagram. No, I think I've just never really been of the mindset that I'm good at things. I've always been of the mindset that I should be better at things, so I want to improve at things. So I think it's just my demeanour is a bit more in that direction, perhaps.
What do you think about people getting sucked into the metrics of training? I don't know if that was as common back when you started Beastmaker, but if we were to go on Instagram right now, we would see people really devoting themselves to, hanging the middle Beastmaker edge with X kilos, and it's almost a sport unto itself now.
Yeah, it is. I love watching all that. It's great. But yeah, I think, if you zoom out, it's all ridiculous, isn't it? Going climbing is ridiculous. Fingerboarding is ridiculous. So you can't say, ha ha ha, you hang on a fingerboard, because it is no more dumb than sitting in the dirt like we were doing all of yesterday.
I agree.
I think there is value in it, isn't there? And I kind of really like that we've made a fingerboard and there's basically one hold on it that the whole world hangs off. I actually really like that. And I do remember at the time when we first made it, there were very few people that could hang on that edge. And now it's kind of fairly standard fare, isn't it? It's like sort of standard strength test, really.
How'd you decide the sizes of all these different things when it was so long ago? And now, like you're saying, that middle Beastmaker edge is iconic, is a benchmark or a test piece of the training world. But my hunch is that you didn't set out to say, okay, we're going to make it exactly like this so that it tests this so that people can compete on it, you know?
Well, I mean, it was designed to be a one-arm hold that was comfortable, essentially. So that's kind of all it was. And I think we pretty much got that right. I mean, it's fairly comfortable. But it's just an edge. It's not complex, is it?
Yeah.
It's not like a sort of intricate marble carving of something. It's just it's an edge.
There could be a little limited edition there. I'm just saying. Yeah. Okay, I gotta ask you, and you can just tease it or not say too much, but I think that I'm not alone in hoping that Beastmaker has ideas around a training board and that kind of standardized board world, and just if it hasn't crossed your guys' mind, just I want a +1 that I love boards, I love what Beastmaker does, and I'd love to see more of it.
Yeah, it's crossed our minds, and we're trying to make it happen, and we're quite confident that we're going to get there. But I can't really give a timeline. But no, definitely, we would absolutely love to get involved with the board scene, because again, like the fingerboard scene, it's great in itself, isn't it? It's brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. Just as long as it's in the discussion over there, I just
We'll
wanted
get
to
there.
make sure. And yeah, the board scene sure has. I mean, it really has become a thing unto itself, and I mean, I don't want to say this confidently, but when I trace back the history of boards in my mind, it really starts in the UK, and so having it continue and be
Yeah, we need
pushed
to bring
is
it
good.
home, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does. I think, we want to do something that's slightly different. A lot of the boards now are kind of, they're boards, but they don't have a real sort of board climbing soul, I don't think. And we want to bring that kind of cellar style, that hardcore thing back into it. But hopefully not at a really elite level, but we want that kind of vibe to it. And that's what we're aiming for. But.
All right, sign me up. Put me on the waiting list. I can't help but notice that we have this metal edge on the table, and this is Foxy Climbing you're working on with Shauna, and I'm just kind of curious about, when I think of Beastmaker and all you've done there, a lot of it is wood focused, but wood has its benefits, just like every material has its limitations. And is this new company like a way for you to have a metal era?
Yeah, it's a genre I'm into. Beastmaker's all about wood, and it wouldn't have made sense to do an aluminium training product with Beastmaker. It just didn't sit well with everything, So Shauna and I decided to do it on our own, and the main reason to do it is because all the sort of single arm fingerboards that are out there at the moment, they just didn't feel that portable. But with aluminium, you can kind of shrink it as much as possible and get it tiny, so it's pocket sized. That's kind of the idea, is to make the smallest but actually useful tool that you could take with you.
Yeah, it is light, and I like that it's simple. I don't know, I just, in general, in some ways, I just need one edge. Just like you were saying, the middle edge on the Beastmaker was made for one arm. It's like, that's a comfy edge, and do I need 10 of them, or do I kind of need one for warming up? And everyone probably has their edge too, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Some people like a bigger edge, some people like something smaller, but yeah, for me, this was just a kind of, it feels like a good size in terms of actual edge, but then the thing fits in your pocket, so it doesn't weigh a ton. You can just take it with you. It can live in your climbing bag and come with you. It doesn't ever get beaten up to the point where you can't use it. You can wash it, whatever, It just seemed, I'm really into aluminium and the kind of look and feel of it, and it seemed like a really kind of good material to use for it. And actually, Fingers of Fury got there first with an aluminium edge. And he's been great, actually. I've been chatting to him loads about this. But yeah, it seemed like a great material to use to make something small, and yeah, I'm quite pleased with it. We use it. We actually use it all the time. You know?
I saw you guys yesterday.
Yeah, it's not like it just sits there in our bag. It was made as something that we wanted. You know?
I mean, perfect for travel, really.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older and having to carry so much kid stuff, but I'm kind of on board with a little bit lighter, a little more minimal, like just, there's not enough room for my stuff anymore. So anything you can do to shrink it down and make it light, I
think that was definitely part of it. Yeah, space is at a premium, and if you're taking up, you know, a set of kids' clothes because you want to take your enormous portable fingerboard, then you feel a bit rude, don't you? So
that's not appropriate. It's kids' friend.
Yeah, so you can have this on your keys now, and then it's, you know, it just comes with you.
So on that note of people loving different edges, something I can't help but ask you, because you've, well, written a book on some of this stuff, is what do you do when you're not so good on little crimps? I don't know if that's a problem you have, but I do a lot of training. I really struggle on smaller crimps, and yeah, just that. Ned, I want to be able to crush micros. Just, can you help me?
Well, I think a lot of it's the morphology of your fingers, how bony they are at the ends, perhaps. But also, I think you can toughen up the ends of your fingers by repeated loading on little holds. I think it's not that common that people really climb on small holds, is it? You can go to a gym now and you're kind of on big stuff constantly. You never really have to pull on something tiny, so it's just about putting in the hours hanging on them, unfortunately. But I think you can adapt the sort of pudginess of your fingers to toughen it up. But also, I mean, some people's fingers just don't really work that well on really small holds, unfortunately.
You're like, so you basically just like, you're screwed, Josh.
Yeah, but you know, yeah. Some people have really bony fingers, don't they? And they're good on little ratty crimps.
I'm pretty sure Beastmaker puts out some small crimps. I know there's 6 mil edges, or they're 4. Maybe that's.
We never went to 4 because it just seemed disgusting. You know, I think 6 is quite disgusting.
You must have done this with someone. I might even have them. Some companies have made them before, and it doesn't even really look like they're there. Like you could just break it with, you know, your fingers right there. And the reason I bring it up is I'm just curious if when you think about training and maybe training pudginess, do you spend time ever on really small edges? Do you ever make time in your training for that?
Yeah, I do. I hang on 6 mil micros loads, actually. Yeah, wow. It's one of the things I do quite regularly. But then again, a lot of our stuff in the UK is kind of low angle, or often a lot of stuff on Gritstone, you imagine it's this big slopey ball, but actually really you just crimp really hard on something. So it ends up, in the UK, it ends up that you're pulling on little holds quite a lot. It feels like more so than a lot of other areas, perhaps. So it's just something I've always tried to stay on top of. And I'm not good on small holds, so I have to kind of do a lot of it, I think.
Yeah, that's something you called out in the book that I found useful, is embracing training full crimp, and maybe embracing training full crimp on micros. And I guess I just want to, look into that a little bit more, because a lot of people have, I don't know, I guess that was just the old school style, was don't train full crimps. You're going to hurt your fingers.
Yeah.
You don't hear too much of that anymore, but I guess also it's kind of interesting there hearing, when I think about training full crimp on micros, I don't know if what you're doing is getting, really powerful and strong. It's almost like a different kind of training that's almost like a adaptation that I don't want to call, like, it's not like power you're looking for.
Yeah, there's something going on, isn't there? But it seems like when you hang on them a bit, it becomes easier. So, I don't know what's going on, but it seems to help. And for me, it always makes me feel a lot better when I grab something small outside, if I've done a lot of that.
Yeah, just, it's almost like a mental thing. You're like,
probably it deadens the ends of your fingers to the point where you don't mind doing it. And, I think that, there's loads to it, I think.
I just laugh. Isn't climbing wonderful? It just deadens your fingers, so it's not so bad when you... Yeah, I was wondering about the section with, I want to say it was like active gripping, or active versus passive. And it was this idea that there's grips that we do where you're really, active in your intention versus kind of hanging on the structure, and just, kind of understanding more about what that means when you train those. Like when you train really passive grips, like maybe a 3-finger drag, I would say is a more passive grip.
Yeah.
Do you think about just kind of relying on those structures, or do you try to, actively grab it? What's the crossover between active training versus passive training?
Yeah, well, I think, if I'm doing a kind of more passive style of training, then it is just dangling on the structures, basically. That's what it feels like you're doing. And for me, that's always been my default. I'm not sort of by default a closed crimper necessarily. I'll always kind of, when I get, when you get tired, you just default to what you can do, don't you? And for me, my hands just straighten out and I'm just hooked on. I just sort of, I'm a dangler basically. And I've had to put a lot of work into really kind of being able to pull in on things and actually grab onto things.
People do have these predispositions. And it's funny because if I'm doing something that's really pumpy, maybe I'm sport climbing, I have friends that they just always want to close. Like for them, closing it down, they get pumped and they close it. For me, when I have to close and I'm pumped, I just open. I can't do it.
I'm the same. I think you always see when people get pumped, you see they go into the happy place, don't they? They end up at what they can do, don't they?
Have you heard of this term in training, this idea of overcoming isometrics versus yielding isometrics? I don't know if that term has kind of entered our vocabulary more recently, but any comments on it? Because I don't know if you actually addressed that specifically in the book, because maybe we didn't use those terms.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of more or less what I was getting at with my terms of active and passive, but now there's more exciting words for it. I don't know. They have become kind of popular things to discuss now, haven't they? And I think it's true. You kind of really holding on is different to just sort of draping your hand on a hold, but they both have their place.
Yeah. So depending on the grip type, really it changes the way that you approach it in terms of like intention and like, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm just making this funny face of like really yarding into it. And
the crimp face.
Yeah. Well, I just think it is I think it's important to highlight because I'm not sure I always did it. I think for me, training is not something maybe it's the era I came out of, but just wasn't that big a thing. And so oftentimes when I would, do training, I would kind of half-ass it. I kind of like show up and just kind of like, oh, look, I'm doing the grip that they're saying.
Yeah.
And, I'm not so sure if that's really, I think the undercurrent of how you train is there's an intensity there.
Yeah, it's intention and intensity, isn't it? I think. Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of people saying that they're training, but they're just sort of flopping about, aren't they? They're not. Yeah, there isn't any intensity. And I think that for the sort of active gripping, that's exactly how it feels to me. Is you're really holding on.
One of the things that it changed my approach to training, in the sense of it actually made me train a bit. Is I will credit it to you, Ned. Is I guess for me, I like climbing and I like trying hard, and typically I would go in and just wreck myself climbing, and then to think that I could show up the next day and it just didn't.
Yeah.
Because I knew that, I just somehow deeply knew that if I felt wrecked, like it wasn't going to do much, and I really didn't want to. And so this idea of training before climbing and in some capacity was actually a big deal for me, man.
Yeah.
Like I will say that I took it to the most minimal amount where I will often literally just do one set. I'll warm up, I'll do my shoulder rehab, all the old man warm up, and I'll say, okay, let's do one set.
Yeah.
And this is my grip type. And you kind of gave me license to do that in a podcast or article I read of yours many moons ago, where it was just like that was the way it fit in. And I gotta say, even doing one is a lot more than doing none.
Well, think how many you've done now.
Yeah.
That was great. I mean, I think that's so important. Yeah, treating your warm up and your training is sort of the same thing almost, aren't you?
Yeah.
Warming up to the point where you're giving it absolute full beans on your fingers, and then you're good to climb.
Do you ever do any training afterwards? Or I guess actually the question I want to ask is, I was just saying how I'm climbing a bunch, I'm exhausted the next day. You know, do you ever just say, I'm not going to train today because I'm wrecked? Or am I making a mistake there where, you know, it's a rest day, Josh, but you know, just because you feel a certain way, maybe you should warm up, maybe you should check yourself. Just how do you know when to push it and when not to?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me over the last few years, that's been more about what I can do. I think it just generally, you know, you have a child and then suddenly time is quite limited, and you.
What time?
Yeah, well, so it's not really in my hands anymore now. I'll train when I can, and then often I'll just have a couple of days when I can't do anything, but, you know, whatever. Whereas I think, yeah, maybe in my 20s I probably just did too much. I think everyone does, don't they, when they're young?
Yeah.
Because you just quite like it, and it's nice to feel a bit wrecked as well, isn't it? It's kind of fun. So I think everyone does a bit much.
It's actually something I've had to kind of change. Is I like getting wrecked. I feel like if I don't, like, what am I even doing?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's definitely part of it that I love, is feeling tired. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
really nice.
I know you had, I met Frankie, your daughter, but you also had a bout with celiac, or I shouldn't say about, you discovered that you had celiac disease. Is it disease? Do you call it that? That sounds yeah. Can you tell me about that and just how you've worked through it? Because now you seem to be on the mend.
Yeah, so a bit before, so Frankie's nearly 3, and a bit before she was born, I started noticing weird symptoms. Usually celiac disease presents with gut symptoms because it's your gut lining kind of dying off, essentially. So I got all these odd things, like I'd get loads of back pain, my hands would swell up, all this joint pain, my knees, loads of my joints just started swelling, and then I got this insane fatigue where I just had to lie down in the middle of the day, and it kind of got worse and worse. But because there were no gut symptoms, it wasn't that obvious what it was, so I went to loads of doctors about various different things it could have been, and kind of didn't get anywhere. So I had a couple of years of doing that where I couldn't really climb. I could sort of tick over, but it just hurt. It was a bit boring because, you know, you just pull on and it hurts. So then I'd do the bare minimum and stop. And then, I don't want to say fortunately, but my brother, more or less the same thing happened to him. But for whatever reason, the system he ended up in with the doctors, and I mean, his wife's a doctor, which probably helped, but he ended up getting diagnosed with celiac disease after about a year of that. And then as soon as he got told he had that, it was just so clear to me. So then, yeah, that was it. And then we both stopped eating gluten at more or less the same time, and we both almost have gone back to normal.
Jeez.
It's crazy.
Gosh, bummer / glad you figured it out. And it must have been rough having a young one, you know, all at the same, you know, it sounds like a lot of big changes in your life all at once. And what was it like getting pulled away from climbing when you have, you know, a company, like your life is pretty darn intertwined with climbing? Yeah,
I mean, I can't escape it, you know, so I mean, it probably wasn't that much fun to be around often. I couldn't even go for a run or do anything like that. I just became really sedentary for periods. It's quite strange because I'm not used to that. But then equally, we had Frankie, so I had something to do, but this big part of my life had just sort of stopped, or sort of wasn't really there. And I think I kind of grieved it a bit. You know, it wasn't that easy to deal with. And I'd keep sort of trying to figure it out, and then think I had an answer, but I didn't, and then get really fed up again. And obviously Shauna was really good and just sort of kept on top of me. No, she was on it and said, look, we'll figure it out. You'll be good. And obviously I didn't believe her. But yeah, I mean, having Frankie made it all a lot easier, honestly. It was hard feeling like that and trying to deal with a tiny baby, but equally, you know, she was there and she's what mattered. So that did actually make it quite a lot easier. But then eventually kind of coming out the end of it was a relief. And then I have a lot more energy to give to Frankie, which is brilliant now.
What did it make you feel about climbing after, kind of getting it taken away? Like it's really fun to progress and to have it be your whole, I don't want to say your whole life, but especially when you're younger, it's very fun to chase your potential and then to kind of have it taken away for a bit. Like you said, you haven't grieved it. What did you learn about kind of what you love about climbing by having it get taken away from you for a bit?
Yeah, well, I think there's loads of it that I missed, but I think it's kind of, and I always expected it'd be unrealistic to think you're going to climb hard and push yourself for the rest of your life. So at some point in your life you are going to have to take a step back and just chill out a bit. And that's coming, don't you?
No, I don't. I lie to myself all the time, Ned.
We can see it on the horizon. And I've sort of been bracing for it because you just kind of know. But just to have that forced upon me was quite hard. It shouldn't have been, but it's just is. It's just now I think when I look back and I kind of wasn't able to do stuff, now whenever I get to go climbing or get to do something physical, I enjoy it a lot more because I kind of remember not having it and not being able to do it. So and it sort of reinvigorated me for climbing and for just being active basically, because I can and it doesn't hurt anymore. So it's actually really fun again.
Yeah, whenever I get hurt, and or at least for me, I often get hurt right when I'm the strongest I've been.
Classic.
Of course, because I always want more. Just more.
Oh, we all do that, don't we?
And then you get hurt, and you just think to yourself, "Wow, like I was such an idiot that I didn't even enjoy that last climb I did, and all I cared about was this other climb I might be able to do now."
Yeah.
And just having that step back where you go, you know what? Actually, that warm-up was a blast. Like, let's go back to that one even.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a cliche, isn't it? But it's true. And I think for me, going back to what I said earlier about enjoying climbing well, when I felt at the most ill, my hips hardly even moved anymore. So the way I moved just felt so horrible to me. So when I did go climbing, it just felt all off. It wasn't fun. Whereas now, I can, even on an easy climb, I can just move in the right way now. So I think, this is actually really fun. Ooh. But yeah, I sort of stiffened up and I just moved really clumsily for a while and it just felt horrible. Felt like I was in someone else's body.
Yeah.
So, being able to just climb and it feel normal again is great. It's just really fun.
I would say that's part of my concern about getting older is it's not exactly that I want to always climb hard or harder grades. I think when I think about why I like climbing quote unquote hard for myself, it's because of how it feels. It feels beautiful. It feels good to move well.
Yeah, and it's so easy to forget that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so easy, but that's ultimately why we get into it, isn't it? And that's why kids do it as well, because they're just playing around.
Yeah, it made me think when you talked about how you were a kid trying to keep up with the adults. That's actually when I started climbing, I was about that same age, and there really wasn't other kids. There was.
Yeah, it's very uncommon.
Yeah, now that I call them, they're adults, but when I think about 18-year-olds, I think
yeah, things
quite
change.
But as a result, it definitely developed in me a style of, I would heel hook over my head because, I don't know, as a kid, you gotta just try anything because the holds are where they are. And I don't know if that informed your, style and flexibility, but it's true that I don't know, how you start out and the challenges you face do kind of give you a toolkit for how to approach challenges.
Yeah, definitely do. And I think the people that you climb with, I guess, I was lucky that people I climbed with were really encouraging of that sort of, heel over the head sort of thing. But some people I know would be quite dismissive of a kid doing things like that, I think. I was lucky that I just knew people that were really supportive in that sort of situation.
You said things are probably different now around the allowance of a technique like that. I shouldn't say allowance, just that people might have dismissed that or said, hey, that's inappropriate. Yeah, how has the scene changed in the UK, and where do you see it going when it comes to the different techniques or styles that people embrace now?
Well, I think comp climbing's fixing that attitude, really, isn't it? Because now I think a lot of problems that they almost set them to make the competitors look daft. You know, they set stuff that is just bizarre, running around, leaping, whatever, and it is just a bit daft, but they have to be good at it. So we're used to seeing all this really mad stuff going on, and they're always trying to force moves that are unusual. So you just see so much more of it, don't you? And I think you see it in the comps, and then you always see comp style setting in gyms. So you see, you know, everyone's trying all these handstands or whatever, aren't they? And it's just becoming kind of normal. That's what climbing's becoming now.
Yeah, I like that you said it kind of almost normalizes it, or it makes it, because the setting encourages creative solutions, it actually brings it to be okay to do, I don't know, not silly kinds of, but movements that are new and odd, but maybe required. Something that I always like about comp setting is I feel like it unlocks potentially new things on rock. And I'm just wondering if you guys have seen that in the UK. The example I often like to use is Industry of Cool. Yeah, Industry of Cool.
Yeah,
rock.
the dyno. Yeah.
You know, it's a little 1-2, and you know, I think sometimes the older school climbers denigrate these new, paddle dyno, but then that line got opened up because of that. And you know, when I think of Gritstone and this big history and these technical test pieces, have you seen any new lines get opened up because of the innovation and techniques that we have?
I mean, I can't think of anything specific, but I think it is true. And I think also actually a lot of the people that are out there looking for new boulders are perhaps a bit more old school. It's a kind of middle-aged man pursuit, essentially, isn't it? Going and looking for new boulders. So there's always that sort of attitude. But you can definitely see it was not going to be long until these comp kids that are incredibly capable at that sort of gymnastic stuff start looking for things outside that are like that. And I can't wait to see it. It'll be amazing. Now, I've seen a few features that look like they'd work like that, but I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything specifically. But there's going to be tons of stuff, isn't there? It's just that the people that are out there looking for problems aren't that familiar with it yet, and it's not that obvious maybe. But I think it's in a similar way that for years climbing was just sort of crimps on a wall, and then it became crimps on an overhang, and then suddenly compression and prows were invented, weren't they, and squeezing. Yeah. And before that, no one really saw it, did they? They didn't see the holds, so it just didn't exist. And I think it will be the same thing. We'll just see all these different types of moves suddenly.
Yeah, I love that, coming with new vision. And you even did it there where maybe back in the day they would look at a roof and just be like, people don't climb roofs. We don't climb our roof.
Yeah,
that's
we climb
ridiculous.
on slabs of vert.
Yeah, and I've used that example on that Industry of Cool dyno where my hunch is that, I don't know Fred Nicole, but I am just going to use it as an example. So forgive me, Fred, if I'm wrong here, but my hunch is if Fred walked past that in 2005, even though he is an incredible climber, it probably just wouldn't have looked like something. You know, he wouldn't have seen like the way this may go is by doing a triple dyno here.
Yeah.
And so who knows what people walking around the peak will see now.
Around the world. Well, Fred might have just done a lock-off as well. You can't you can't forget that. But also it's interesting you mentioned Fred's era, because Clem Loscott was the sort of pioneer of dynamic climbing, wasn't he? And he was doing things that people took decades to really sort of catch up with in terms of really dynamic boulder problems.
Yeah, what a big, powerful guy that
amazing.
Broke the mold and did things that was different.
Yeah, so creative in what he was looking for and the problems he did. But there'll be tons of that sort of thing. I think we just need to accept that it's out there to be found, and then the right people that have the skills need to go and do it, because a load of middle-aged men can't do these sort of moves, can they?
Well, I love the way you say that, and you're so open-minded, because it's, I don't know, it's hard to acknowledge that with all the growth and changes we've seen in bouldering since Fred, there's still probably that much and more in front of us. And it's hard to, I literally don't have that vision. And,
yeah, and well, also in terms of what's in front for bouldering, we're in this bit of a zone at the moment where the hardest problems, most of the 9As are just kind of crimpy overhangs, aren't they? And there's not much, maybe there's a couple of things, but on the whole, that's the style that people are looking for. And I think maybe that's because it's easier to find that sort of thing. You can look at a wall and think, oh, some holds, that'll work. But perhaps, when there's a Font 9A paddle dyno, what does that look like? It's going to be quite hard to spot unless you're really kind of in the zone of looking for that sort of thing, I think.
That's a good point. I would actually argue that part of the reason why those are the 9As we're seeing is because guys like you have made tools that lead towards people that kind of style, and we see these errors.
Maybe that's right.
I'm sorry, that was not meant in a negative way.
No.
Because you could put another way where gyms and the steep climbing that we create in gyms allow people to have that kind of volume on that kind of climbing, which then allowed them to go and find roofs and do it.
Yeah, and boards. I think board coaches meant that stuff like off the wagons become quite a commonly climbed boulder problem, whereas before the boom of board climbing, it was quite different to what you'd find in a gym.
Yeah, I would say the thing that to see a 9A plus paddle dyno in Font, it'll take time because we need to see what a V13 or 8B paddle dyno looks like, and then you can't just jump to that.
Literally.
There you go.
Yeah, and I mean, I love the idea that there's all these kind of mental moves out there. Part of the reason I like looking for new problems is because sometimes you can come across something that just forces a move that you would not have imagined.
Yeah.
And for me, that's really interesting. If I just see an overhang with crimps, it's kind of a bit boring, But if you see a feature that it's not obvious how it climbs, or you've got to do something unusual, and for me, that's way more exciting.
Well, and that's what to tie it back into. That's what kind of being a well-rounded climber is being excited when you find something that's not in your toolkit. And I love that when you did Stem Gem yesterday, you pushed off. It was a stemming problem, and the way you got on was by putting your hand on your shoe. You palmed your shoe into the rock.
I thought I'd make it stay then if I pushed on it more.
But what a cool little move to add to your repertoire that I'm sure you've done it before, actually.
Yeah, occasionally.
All right, Ned. Thanks for sitting down with me. I hope I made this clear while chatting where, I read these books about you and fingers first training. I know that title is a bit of what would be a clickbait, to get people to pick it up. And I, think about all the tools you have helped make with Beastmaker that get people into the training mode. But I thought it was really important to emphasize that you are a well-rounded climber and you are a technical climber, and that training is wonderful and beautiful and can be a rabbit hole that people can go down if that's how they choose. But I just thought it was cool to see that other side of you, understand the abilities and the love you have for movement, and connecting that with training is, kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just the things I'm interested in, I guess. So.
Okay, Ned, well, my last question for you, and I don't know if I prepped you for this, but I'm still going to hit you with it, and that's, Ned, how do you go from good to great?
Well, I think we sort of covered it, didn't we? I think it's essentially the people that become the very best are the ones that just want it the most, I think. I think it's drive. And I don't think you can particularly switch that on or off in people. I think some people just have the drive and they'll do whatever it takes to improve. Whereas a lot of people they'll do some of it, but they kind of can't be bothered. So I think really the people that are the most driven are the ones that end up doing the most stuff. Whether or not they enjoy it all, who knows? But
so I was talking to your wife, Shauna, who is definitely great, quite an accomplished climber as well as you. And something she said that really stood out to me was the difference between motivation and commitment. And the reason why I bring that up and what you're saying is that there's something to tease out there behind being driven and just like every day I skip to the fingerboard versus, you know, I don't know, maybe I'd use the term getting stuck in, you know. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, both work. If you absolutely love every single part of it, then you're Adam Ondra. And that's why he's so good. You know, he just completely loves it all, doesn't he? And he'll do absolutely everything to improve. And he just absolutely loves all of it. So that's why he's that good, because everything is, you know, he's just doing everything really well. But then, yeah, I mean, you also get people that kind of resent it and keep turning up and hate it, but get quite good. But I don't know, I'd probably rather not be that person.
It's hard to compete with people who love the thing you don't love.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing you notice with Adam, is just how much he loves it. That's the kind of thing that stands out, isn't it? And yeah, it's pretty amazing to watch.
My only pushback on that is I was just saying how I have not historically loved training and loved fingerboarding. I gotta tell you, you start doing something, you kind of get into a little habit, and you know, I don't know. There's something to be said for showing up enough to find out if you love it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, well, everyone always says that about go running, don't they? It's horrible until you really enjoy it, and then you keep going. And I think it's kind of the same. Everything that is a bit uncomfortable feels like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And usually the uncomfortable things kind of end up being quite important to you, or being something that you value, or whatever.
Yeah, when I heard Shauna say stuff about showing up and being disciplined even when maybe you don't feel like skipping to the gym.
Yeah.
You know,
she's very good at that.
Well, it's a skill or a muscle that you can lean into, and I guess when I think about being driven and thinking about my goals, and even sometimes the amorphous goal of being a well-rounded climber, I try to like take that and put it into this step in front of me. And,
yeah,
you know, connecting
sometimes
it,
you actually need to remind yourself. You need a kind of tangible reminder of what you're doing, don't you?
Yeah.
And for me at the moment, that's just that if I do a bit of work, then when I go out climbing, I tend to have a bit more fun. So that's kind of easy, isn't it? It's not complicated to do the work in that case. But if you don't have that, the reminder of what you're doing it for, then it is a lot harder to turn up.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say is to connect it to, I think you wrote this in here, or maybe it was somewhere else, and it was that idea of, you know, one set is a lot more than zero, as we just talked about with my example.
Yeah,
but that
100% more.
I don't know, I kind of like gave myself a little bit of freedom after hearing that and reading this, where maybe I just want to do one set and I do enjoy it, and just if I can find something that I love, then that's better than nothing. And
yeah, exactly. And that's why I always sort of turn my nose up at these very prescriptive plans, because that puts a lot of people off, I think. You know, all you need to do is just more than nothing, and you're going to improve, aren't you? Yeah. And if you do a lot more than nothing, you'll improve quicker. But most people can't be bothered with that, can they? But doing a bit more than nothing is kind of easy. Everyone can do that.
Yeah, there's a U-shaped curve.
Yeah,
one set is a lot more. 2 sets is better. 100 sets, probably not so good. Maybe Alex Magos would beg to differ, but you know, you got to find out what's right for you, and that's why I do like these books that are not so prescriptive. They're like, this is what it's really like, and here's some rough guidelines, and have at it. You know.
Yeah, and then I think people end up enjoying it more if they have more of a relationship with what they're doing as well. So if they perhaps think about it and figure it out for themselves, it might mean a bit more, and maybe then they stick with it or enjoy it or whatever. They just have more of a relationship with it.
Good stuff, Ned. Thanks for all you've given to the climbing world in book form, hold form, hangboard form, and all that is to come also with Foxy Climbing, and I should say Mini Beast. We got some holds for Frankie and all of our friends all around the world who want to start climbing. So yeah, just thanks for contributing so much to climbing. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next project you undertake. I shouldn't say, you're like, that's enough companies. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, thanks. Good to chat. Good to hang over the last few days as well.
Yeah.
Joshua Tree was great.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your trip. I hope you get better conditions, but then you won't have anything to blame.
Yeah, you need an excuse. That's very important, isn't it? Don't forget that.
All right. Thanks again, Ned.
Nice one. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like even more content, go to patreon.com/testpiece. And while you're at it, share this podcast with someone you know who would love it. And please leave us a review or rating at wherever you get your podcasts. We've also got tons of great content on YouTube and Instagram, so don't forget to like and subscribe there. Okay, see you next week.